Hi and welcome back. Today we're going to make this 3D printable tree using some basics in Blender. If you're new to Blender modeling, this is a great place to get started. You can see in the background here, mine is printing now on the bamboo. Let's get started. So we have the basic cube and I've deleted everything else. We're going to go over to edit mode and we're going to just use a few tools. To get started with, we are going to use the loop cut tool over here, and that creates a little extra geometry just slicing across the model. And then we're going to go back and forth between using it and the transform tool over here. We will also utilize the face selection, sometimes the edge selection, or the vertices selection. Vertices selection is just one of these points. The edge is one of the edges, and the face are the faces. The hotkeys for these are 1, 2, and 3. So while I'm on 3 here, I'm going to shift select both of these to get started. And the reason I have a split is because I am going to quickly split the bottom of this trunk into 2 different branches. But before I do, I'm also going to type E to extrude. This is a key because we're going to add segments, and when we do so, we'll be leaving behind some geometry. Just make sure that you don't drag down below and leave these odd manifold or non-manifold edges here. So always extrude up. The other key I'm going to select is S, and that's going to scale things a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to just use the transform controls here to rotate. Sometimes just the view I'm at, or sometimes on a particular axis. And as we go up, I'm going to add a few more extrusions. Not too far. I'm going to type R sometimes to rotate if that's a little bit quicker. Sometimes I'm also going to type the letter G, and that's going to move it. But if I want to move it on a particular axis, such as the green axis, I'll type Y or X to go on one of those axes. But in my case, I'm going to just go by sight. And I'm also going to be orbiting around constantly to make sure that I'm considering all angles for my tree. So now that I have a little bit of a curve here, I'm going to type E again and come up. When we get to this point, we'll also have a rectangle. So we'll want to address that early on by coming and grabbing one of the edge selection tools, hovering down on top, and just typing G to get them close to one another. I don't want to shrink these too much as I go, because I do want the proportions to be somewhat tree-like. But at the same time, we're always shrinking as we go up toward the top. So typing E again, clicking, and then typing S to scale down is great. And then I can also change the direction of my next extrusion by rotating. Also, however, if I don't want to change the angle right away, or I want to be a little bit more organic about it, I can always type G while I have it selected, and that makes it even quicker. So you can see here, if I type E and then G, I can just move that part and be in a different location. So I don't necessarily have to rotate at the beginning like I'm doing now. I can always do it afterwards. I'm also trying to twist this tree because I think it will look really cool, and I want it to be a little bit bonsai-like. So one more time, G to move it over. Okay, let's work on this other side. This one, E, and then G. And I'm going to take care of this rectangular feature by just typing G on that rectangle, or on that edge rather. Again, 3 gets me back over to the face selection method, and I'm going to rotate this one to start, then type E again, G, then S. And hopefully you're getting the idea. You're extruding, you're moving, and then you're scaling. E, S, maybe a rotation, and then G to move it. Okay, we're going to need to add some extra branches. So on a part like this, we can always add a new loop cut. We can do it along the top, but that also adds segments all the way down. So an easier way is to just click it on the side, and when you click on a second loop cut, this time type G to move it. That's going to create some extra segments here. And you can pull your branch from something that looks rectangular, or you can just deal with that rectangular look the way we've been doing on the other ones. So if I pull out from here, E, as I come out, I will then select one of these edges, and then G to make it more boxy. Back to face selection mode, and let's do a few more. Great. So now that we have some branches and we have something started, let's give this some shape. We want this to look more tree-like. We can always use this modifier that I'm going to apply after we've done all of our initial modeling. But for the sake of this tutorial, we'll switch over to object mode. We'll go to our modifiers, and we're going to search for bevel. Here, we're going to switch the width type to %. And we can crank up that percentage, and you can see what it's doing. So let's look at this edge here. That is the bevel, right? So we need more segments for that bevel, and we can see that if we add too many, it'll be just come a little bit too smooth and it adds too much geometry. So we want to find a happy medium. I'm also going to choose a different geometry here. We're going to choose, for the profile rather, custom. And I'm going to just rotate this up, and that's going to give a particular profile here. And we can always add points to this if we want it to be more complex. Again, though, any of these points you add will change the profile, so we don't want to change this too much. We just want to give it a kind of a nice rounded curve with a little character. Okay, that looks pretty good. One last thing I'm going to do is crank up the angle or crank it down, and try to see when I get some interesting characterization. So you can see I get some odd angles in between the corners and things like that. That's great for a tree. One last thing I'm going to do is add just a little bit more to round it off. Great. So now when we're back in edit mode, we can make adjustments. And we can type 1 to grab just one vertex and adjust it. So if things looked, again, too rectangular or too boxy, this is an easy way to fix it. Type G to move it. Let me just do a couple more here. And that looks great. Now, if it's too hard to do more modeling with this on, you can always turn off the modifier temporarily by clicking on this little box and then turn it back on afterwards. So it's a little hard to see exactly where you need to add some geometry, say up here. So let's turn it off and just do a little bit more. I'm going to do one more section and then we'll move on. One last thing, if while you're going and you wanted to shrink, say, this entire middle section, use your edge selection. That's number 2. Click Alt Option if you're on a Mac and click, and that will give you a selection all the way around. And then you can scale that further, or if you want to add some more character to it, just move that whole section. The next thing we want to work on is adding some of these low polygon rocks. This part was fairly easy over in ChatGPT, so I asked it to create a Python script for a low polygon rock. And it created one, and I could just copy it here. And then I'm going to come up and go to my scripting tab, type new, Control V, and then hit play. And it will give you a rock right there. It's that simple. Let's go out. Back out to layout, move my transform tool, and there's a low polygon rock. So you can see in my original model here, I've added a base, and I just created a mesh cylinder and just changed the proportions, stretched it out, and then from the side view, made sure that none of my rocks collided across the bottom. In another video, I'll show you how to make this as a collision, but for now, you have made a pretty simple 3D printable tree. Go to File, Export, STL, and when you import this into Bamboo, you should have a 3D printable tree.